How's it going, everyone? Welcome to my channel. My name is Swanee, and for today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my brand new Madness build in Elden Ring. Now, in the base game of Elden Ring, Madness never really got too much love compared to some of the other build types, but now that the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC is here, they've added a couple of brand new toys that can make your Madness build just absolutely busted. So I'm going to be going over each of the pieces in this build and showcasing some gameplay of it, and then if you want to find each of these pieces for yourself, I will leave links down in the description to different videos that show where to find each of these pieces. So to start us off, I am level 230. I have 60 points into Vigor, 60 points into Mind, 30 Endurance, 30 Strength, 30 Dexterity, 30 Intelligence, 60 Faith, and 10 Arcane. And the reason for that is because most of this build is pretty faith-based. And then for my weapons, I went with the Frenzy Flamed Seal. I upgraded it up all the way. It boosts your Frenzy Flamed incantations and causes slight madness buildup. I went with the Frenzy Flame Perfume Bottle, and I put the Rolling Sparks Ash of War on it, which is really powerful. And then I also went with the brand new Maddening Hands, which also causes madness buildup. Then for the armor, I went with the Black Dumpling Helmet, which is from the base game. It raises your attack power when the wearer suffers from madness. So in this build, we're going to be constantly giving ourselves madness so that we do more damage. And then for the other armor pieces, I went with the Raksha set, which is also a brand new DLC set. And what it does is that it increases damage dealt to foes, but greatly increases the damage taken by the wearer. And this stacks for each piece of gear that you have equipped. So the more pieces you have equipped, the more damage you're going to deal. Then for my talismans, I went with the Fire Scorpion Charm because it raises your fire attack damage, but it lowers your damage negation. So you are going to deal more damage, but you're going to take more damage. Then for my second talisman, I went with the Aged One's Exaltation. It's a brand new talisman, and it's really good because madness in the vicinity increases your attack power. And since we're going to be giving ourselves madness and all of our enemies madness, we're going to pretty much constantly have increased attack power, which is always nice. I went with the Godfrey icon because it enhances your charged spells and skills, and this also works for incantations. So this is constantly going to be raising our attack power of incantations, which is also pretty nice. And then I went with the Phlox Canvas Talisman because it greatly raises the potency of incantations. So my incantations in this build are very powerful. But that's not all. It gets even crazier because if we go to our Wondrous Physic, I have the Blood-Sucking Crack tier equipped, which enhances the attacks at the cost of HP in the Mix Physic. So anytime you drink it, you are going to constantly be draining health, but it's going to give you more increased damage output. So think of this as like Goku's Kaioken from Dragon Ball. He buffs himself up, but it really drains his life. So drinking this is really going to increase our damage output, but if you do drink it, you have to be careful because if you get hit, you're pretty much going to die. And then the second tier I went with was the Flame Shrouding Crack tier, which will temporarily boost your fire attacks. And since all of our incantations have Frenzied Flame, which has fire, it will increase all of our incantations. And then as for my incantations, I went with pretty much any madness incantation that there is in the game. My favorite two being the Frenzied Burst, which shoots a laser beam out of your eyes and does a crap ton of damage. And then my second favorite one is the brand new one, the Mirdra's Flame of Frenzy, which summons the Lord of Frenzied Flame's head to spew Frenzied Flame. And this incantation is great at taking out crowds of enemies or any big boss enemy like a dragon or the big hippo or anything that takes up a lot of space. This incantation will just absolutely melt them. Now, I had to do a lot of testing and trying out different outfits and talismans, and I had to find the absolute perfect combination to get my attack power as strong as it could possibly get. And for this build, I actually went back to the base game, and I was doing a lot of my testing against some of the base game bosses, which it was absolutely obliterating all the base game bosses. But in this first clip, I was testing it against Godrick the Grafted, and each attack of my Frenzied Burst was doing about 1009 damage per hit. And then after buffing myself by giving myself madness before entering the fight, and then drinking my physic, which is going to drain my health but up my attack power, after doing all that and then fighting Godrick, one hit for my Frenzied Burst was doing 2,399 damage. which just absolutely obliterated him. It actually killed him so quickly that my game kind of glitched out and didn't know what to do. Like, it didn't think that I beat him. He still had a health bar on my screen, and it wouldn't let me fast travel or open my map or anything. Like, I don't think the game is ready for just how quickly I killed him. Then for some additional damage numbers, I went and tried to test it against the troll that's also right before you get to Godrick. After buffing myself up and standing here in the doorway, one shot from the Frenzy Burst did over 3,605 damage, which one shot killed the troll. So this build is obviously pretty good against some of the early game bosses in the base game. So how does it do against some of the DLC characters? Well, I took it into a number of different boss fights, and it did a really good job against the Divine Beast Dancing Lion. Like, each shot from the Frenzied Blast takes a pretty large chunk out of its health pool. You do have to be careful though, because since we are a bit of a glass cannon, if you do get hit, it is going to hurt pretty bad. That's why I made sure to put over 60 points into Vigor, and then I make sure to carry a shield with me in case I need to block some additional damage. This build also did really good against the Ghost Flame Dragon. It made quick work of the Ghost Flame Dragon, and although the incantations are one of the primary damage dealers of this build, I am also using the Perfume Bottle and the Maddening Hands, so anytime I'm encountering smaller enemies outside of a boss, I like to switch to either the hands or the Perfume Bottle, and this is what's going to do the majority of damage to these smaller enemies. And as you can see in this boss fight against the Ancient Dragon Man, the Perfume Bottles were kicking some serious butt. I just made sure to buff myself before entering the boss fight, and then anytime he rushed towards me, the Perfume Bottles would constantly stagger him. And then the Rolling Sparks Ash of War that I have equipped does this little mini burst of fire straight out in front of you, which causes a little mini explosion, and it made quick work of the Ancient Dragon Man. And then I was doing some more testing. I was testing it out against some of the late game enemies. These enemies appear towards the very end of the game, so they're pretty tough, and I was just absolutely obliterating them all like it was nothing. And one of the things that impressed me the most is up here in this area you encounter these little like mini Divine Beast mini bosses, and these soldiers have some pretty crazy attacks. They have like lightning attacks and ice attacks, and they can just absolutely wreck you in a couple of hits. And this build made quick work of these guys. In just like 3 shots of my Frenzied Blast, it took them out like it was nothing. So overall, thanks to the DLC, Madness builds are actually pretty usable. Now obviously there's probably a million different ways that you could make a Madness build. I just went with the glass cannon approach, so I can deal a crap ton of damage, but in return, I'm going to take a lot of damage. So this build is probably best for taking out smaller enemies and smaller tier bosses. You can have some success against some of the big name bosses, but since they hit a lot harder, if you do get hit, you are probably going to die in just 1 to 2 hits. So if you suck at dodging, you are going to struggle a little bit against some of those bosses using this build, but for pretty much any other enemy type that this game has to offer, this build is going to make really quick work of those enemies. You can either use the Perfume Bottles, which does a great job at staggering and pushing back enemies from getting up in your face. You can dual wield the Maddening Hands, which lets you get off a ton of attacks really quickly, which also builds up madness and catches your enemies on fire. Or if you want, you can just sit back at a distance and shoot everything with your Frenzied Blast and pretty much one-shot kill all of the enemies. But that is going to do it for everything in this build. Like I said at the beginning, if there's any of these items that you've yet to find, I will have links down below to different videos showcasing where to find each of these items. So that is going to do it for everything in today's video, guys. If you enjoyed it, then please give it a thumbs up. It's greatly appreciated. It helps me out in the algorithm. Subscribe if you're new here, that way you don't miss out on any future videos. And that is going to do it for me, and I'll talk to you all next time.